Alright, let's start this off with a light trigger warning. This can be light depictions of child and sexual abuse. Alright, so I'm back after a really long time, and such a long wait deserves a really long video, right? So, let's get started. My transition was not a linear process, so far from it. It wasn't being active in online groups like the most of us, it was a lifelong battle with myself and how I was raised. I don't just want to talk about what transitioning is like, but how I got here and why it took so long to realize, and most of all, why my egg would finally get cracked. This is how I came to realize that I was in fact trans, and how that has completely changed the fabric of my life. The best place to start is my childhood. Like most of us, it unfortunately was full of traumatic events and feelings being pushed down. I was born into a semi-Catholic household, and I say semi-Catholic because my mother was practicing, but my father has always been staunchly atheist. I was born after my sister as the younger sibling, their perfect nuclear family. My earliest memories involve going to church with both my mom and sister. I don't recall much specifics of those days, but I do remember being totally infatuated with going to church and Bible school. I remember during an Easter egg hunt, we got split up into girls and boys and being so confused why I was paired with the boys. I remember feeling upset, but I don't know if I ever properly expressed that. And I remember the last time I went being taught that we're all of sin and we all need to repent. And it was doubly so for women. And life was about avoiding temptation because it was quote unquote our fault that humanity had fallen into sin. Despite being AMAB, I remember asking my mom why it was our fault, and she was confused and replied like, I'm apparently a boy, so it wasn't technically my fault. And I was really confused, so I just decided I had to be mistaken. Never mind how bigoted it all was. And that was the start of my repression of my trans identity from what I can remember. Unfortunately, my childhood is fragmented, like shattered glass swept away into sand. I remember at one point a few years later when I had to be about 7 asking my dad why I was a boy. He didn't answer my question. He instead explained what being a boy was in his opinion, which boiled down to just having a penis, being successful, and having a wife. At this point, my parents had made me cut my hair, which I had grown to a shaggy shoulder length. So once again, I pushed down how I felt because I had to be mistaken, right? This is about the same time I started to make more friends. My parents were incredibly strict about who I was friends with and when I went out. So my friends who were girls got pushed aside because my parents were both uncomfortable with the idea of me being friends with them, and they would make incredibly inappropriate comments about my friendships with them. So from there, I basically just had one friend, and I would go over to his house constantly to play his Xbox because I only had a GameCube and Wii at the time. And we didn't really get along great, and I didn't understand why at the time. It ended up being nothing personal. It's just I was trying to cosplay the boy they were. And the video games I played became an escape. I didn't know what I was escaping from, but I knew it was better than being trapped. And I thought everything I was feeling was coming externally. Then, someone new moved into my neighborhood. This is a good time to take a step back and acknowledge a couple things happening at home. First was that my older sister was a clear favorite. She would constantly beat me with sticks and blame me for it, pretending to be like a Legend of Zelda duel according to her. And I would consistently have a black eye or bruises, and I was always grounded for things I didn't do, which meant I had nothing to do but just sit in an empty room. No books, no friends, not even blankets. Homework only was given when I was given permission, along with continued mistreatment by everyone. Violent and abusive behavior towards me was normal. And whenever I wasn't grounded, I was obsessed with Sonic, Minecraft, Halo, Mario, you know, the childhood staples. And I would beg my parents to listen that my sister kept framing me, yet no matter what, they wouldn't listen to me. And my dad became increasingly drunk and violent as recession loomed and the house started to face foreclosure. At the same time, my mom dropped Christianity entirely for genuinely worshiping the Greek gods, no less. And it really felt like the whole family was coming unwound. So, if we get back to the person who moved into the neighborhood, their name's Harmony, and they had the cutest cat, but neither of us knew our identity at the time. And I desperately wish I remembered how we became friends, but they were the first person I met that understood me. One of the only people that did. They introduced me to the PlayStation 3, Little Big Planet, Roblox, just gaming on a PC, so much. And they were my first best friend. They were my only best friend. And they were also everything I wanted to be at the time. I had no clue of the struggles they were going through, but somehow they changed and saved my life. They changed my perspective on the world for the first time. They were the best of friends to me, and I desperately wished I was a better friend to them and expressed the love we shared. We started to grow apart when they moved away, and ashamedly, I started to resent them. I had internalized the things my parents had said about them. And while they were growing into their identity, I was projecting my own, internalizing the same bigotry and transphobia I'd been shown my whole life. Because of them, I used my home PC to play Roblox with them until my parents wouldn't let me anymore, and I was forbidden from using a PC at all. Once they moved, I only saw them a few more times, at 2 of my birthday parties and 2 of their birthday parties. And because of some fun mental issues I started developing, I got the same gift for her for 2 years in a row, not even remembering the last birthday party. I also started saying some pretty hateful language by this point, so I ended up stopping to see them, and it was quite deserved too. I had assumed it was my fault, and I tried building a PC once as a way to reconnect, but I ended up stopping, and I didn't know if I really deserved to fix that friendship. I just kind of hoped they found happiness, hoped they knew they were cool as fuck, and I just held on to the memories of our sleepovers, the laughs we shared, and the games we played, and the way my world revolved around them. And I would watch their live streams and lurk. Rewinding from there a bit, soon after they had moved, before the last time I saw her, is about the point where my life took a turn for the worst. My family's house went into foreclosure, and my dad was laid off, and my mom was going to medical school to become a nurse. At this point in my life, I was repeatedly sexually assaulted by 3 separate people, and I felt so disgusting and alone. Then we moved to a new city, to a new school, and somehow I was even more alone than before. I couldn't understand how I was feeling, so I mostly just stopped feeling entirely. And to make matters worse, puberty was going nuts. By 14, I had an actual beard. I remember trying to shave it over and over and crying in the shower every single day. And I would shower before my dad turned off the water, and then I'd go hide in my room for the next hour. And I just gave up. I stopped trying. I stopped caring. I stopped existing. I just found a group of guys that talked to me, and I stuck with them. I existed just to please other people. We rarely ever got along, but I kept seeing them. When I would dye my hair, those friends would make fun of me, and I would backtrack. Constantly made fun of for being so girly. I just kept trying to be the guy I supposedly looked like, but the harder I tried, the more I loathed myself. In trying to be acceptable to anyone, I basically became no one. And I did meet my ex-fiance here, but we were briefly friends and nothing happened between us for a few more years. In high school, even though I repressed myself a lot, I did find a deep love for the music arts. I did wind ensemble and jazz as a first chair trombone. I also did marching band for a year and a half. I quit that after being cheated on, which broke this pretty thin facade. I was constantly made fun of for being the girl in the relationship, so I assumed I needed to be more masculine. I struggled a lot with my sexuality during school. I felt some attraction towards men, and I was totally confused at the sapphic desire I felt towards women. Why did I feel gay when thinking about women, but not men? It was incredibly weird, and out-of-body feeling that only made sense after my egg cracked. This period of cosplaying a man was so incredibly toxic that I actually turned down the alt-right pipeline. I remember it started with H3H3 and Gamergate, and from here I became a pretty vitriolic bully. The harassment I put out to my queer classmates was verbally violent and inexcusable. So, deep in denial about myself, I had fashioned my whole life into a lie. I had a friend that I was with at the time, and I was always fighting with him, but also always following in his shadow. It wasn't until 2016 in my freshman year of high school that I started to realize how actually evil he was. but it took until my senior year in 2019 to finally cut him off. To own how evil I was by association. Unfortunately, he continued down that path where he became a Nazi, but that development happened long after I called him out on his shitty behavior and beliefs before. At this point in my junior year in 2018, I had tried and failed to pass the Running Start program, which is getting your associate's degree in high school, and I kind of felt like my life was over. My dysphoria gave me no real will to try, and I didn't understand how I was feeling and didn't really have the resources for it. I was prescribed antidepressants after that because I had tried to take my life, and that got my parents to at least try and get me help. I was put on Wellbutrin, and it made me feel even worse. In hindsight, it was because I didn't have depression. I was depressed because I had gender dysphoria. I became such a numb shell of a person, I couldn't feel anything at all. I tried so hard to just do the career my parents picked for me. Then, about a year after, I stopped taking it. I still had some of that friend group, but I felt like I was forcing myself to fit in. And it felt like part of me was missing. Like I was in some weird abstract denial. Like my lie was coming unwound. Then the pandemic started. Right before the pandemic, I ran into my ex at a party. From that point, we became inseparable. They're non-binary, and they were both incredibly supportive and incredibly abusive. When the pandemic started, I slowly grew apart from what remained of my friend group. The protests over the murder of George Floyd were the final straw of me leaving that group. They gave me the strength and courage to leave them, starting with the asshole I singled out before. Now that I was 18, I stopped getting haircuts because I always wanted long hair. And this was right after I got forced to have a buzzed cut fade. So with that, my family also moved away with me, and we all went out to live in the countryside. I was given the basement and charged $800 a month to live there and do chores. I got my first job, and for the first year, I gave almost all the money I made to my parents. They had completely trapped me with them, thinking they had given me the encouragement to get a big job they wanted me to have. Instead, I completely fell apart. I had been brought to my lowest point. I would work all day and come home to be locked in a basement unless I was cleaning for them. I became totally pulled into my video games and working, and my partner was an hour away, and getting out over there was pretty impossible, and getting them to come over to me proved more and more impossible, all while I'm still supposed to move out. Then the house flooded. The basement was destroyed, and I was forced to move into their moldy trailer. I wasn't allowed to keep any of my personal belongings in there. Those had to stay in the flooded basement. I could only use the shower and laundry machine twice a week. I became disheveled. Everything here is really difficult to remember. The beard that I despised just grew and grew. I was greasy, depressed, I ate constantly and slept when I wasn't eating, smoked weed from when I woke up to when I passed out, partly because my ex forced me because otherwise I wasn't interesting if I wasn't stoned. Broken up by occasional gaming stints that lasted hours. I played so much Apex Legends, maining Wraith because I felt an abstract joy playing her, and my Xbox was kept inside, and I was forbidden from having a computer at all. Even less occasionally, I would see my ex. They never were interested in making the time to see me. And during this time, I started looking at what being trans was. Mostly just reading people's stories on Reddit. I felt that sense of connection I once felt with Harmony. Instead of rejecting it this time, though, I just told myself I wasn't ready to answer that question. I was still scared of being one of those. But the thought was there and the seed planted. I ended up running away. I had a place to move into, but I would be homeless for a little bit before getting there. After living there for a couple months and then at my ex's parents', which, sidebar, was miserable, I finally was able to move into an apartment. So with that, my ex-sister and I moved in together. We made our witchy little apartment, but immediately there were problems. My sister hated my ex, rightfully and unfortunately, refused to acknowledge their identity, and would constantly trash talk them, while simultaneously doing the same about me to them. They would talk shit about how I was overweight as if they aren't, dressed like a bisexual hippie, and just call me weird constantly and make fun of me for being a girly quote unquote man. Mostly though, for my adamant support of queer rights and trans rights. With that, I closed off a bit again and tried to cure the identity that kept reeling in my head. I became obsessed with working out. I figured if I just became buff enough, that would cure my dysphoria and I would see that I actually did become a man. So I spent most of a year working out vigorously, 5 days a week, taking creatine, pre-workout, protein shakes, protein everything, protein pancakes. I lost so much weight and got into really great shape, but every time I took progress photos, I would just feel disgusted with how I looked and immediately delete them. Why wasn't it working? I was getting promoted at work, I was in shape. Why was I so miserable? This was a really low point for me, and everyone that didn't know me personally thought I had it all figured out. But I never felt more confused and lost. It started creeping back into my head again. After every shift, every workout, every night in bed, every day in the shower. Why couldn't I have just been a girl? It would have been so much easier, right? But I didn't want to be one of those. That abstract concept of an other born from my own internalized transphobia. All I wanted was to be a girl. Everything would be easier for me somehow if I was just a girl. If I could press a button and become a girl, of course I would. But everyone would, right? My egg had finally started to crack. I couldn't deny myself anymore. But what if I looked like one of those ugly memes? What if it went wrong and no one liked me anymore? But does anyone even know me? Did I? On a drive with my ex, I suddenly asked, would you still love me as a woman? And they said in their oh so infinite care and wisdom, well, it's not like I have a choice. You are who you are. And I thought about that for a while. Then everything changed. Chapel Roan release. I'm dead serious. The rise and fall of the Midwestern Princess was the final push I needed. I tried to make fun of it, claim I didn't like it, but I was lying. I was in the top 05% of listeners for Good Luck Babe. I became obsessed with Pink Pony Club and that feeling that I belonged somewhere. This time I knew exactly where. So I came home and my ex was home, and I was upset with myself. That self-loathing was everywhere in me. They tried asking what's wrong, but I burst out saying that I wanted to transition and then started crying. So much weight just suddenly lifted. And as soon as I said it out loud, I knew it was true. My ex was surprised but supportive enough, although clearly envious. They helped me shave my legs and face and helped me set up razor subscriptions. Starting would have been much harder without their support. That week, I scheduled an HRT appointment with Planned Parenthood. Just one phone call and a 9-month wait until the appointment. I'm lucky to live somewhere with self-determination. However, I was going to be 22 by the time I started. Was that too late? Who do I ask? Would anyone even accept me? So I stayed out of the community still, fearing rejection, especially for my hateful past. Then, a couple weeks later, sensing something was up, my sister asked to do my tarot reading. I don't remember the specific cards I pulled, but they said I was transforming, going through a great period of change. They also said I would find deep personal happiness. To me, it felt like a sign that I was on the right path. It affirmed my feelings deeply. So much that a few days after, I told my sister everything. They claimed to support me, but their criticisms of queerness and trans people got even more and more extreme over time instead. I stopped talking as much about it to her as my ex and I started planning our escape to our own place. While we watched in horror as Trump got closer and closer to winning a second presidency. I went to my first rave while out, and even without HRT, I was able to have an amazing time as myself. I truly felt free and right for the first time. Then, Trump won, and it was like the world went cold. My sister was happy that an RFK would be in office. Disgusting. And I was terrified I wouldn't get to start HRT. But luckily, my state was quick to write provisions protecting Planned Parenthood's operations. Then, December came, ironically on my sister's birthday, and I had to go to my appointment. The only problem was that it was 130 miles away. But it was the only available appointment, and I wouldn't miss it. So I got in my rundown Prius and started driving. I had no AC or even any air, so I had to drive with my windows open the whole time. Wearing multiple coats and gloves, but still freezing cold, I drove for 4 hours north. It was a wonderfully beautiful and bitterly cold drive. I made it to the clinic with just enough time to use the bathroom before disaster struck, and the process of starting was so easy. I just told them I wanted a transition, affirmed that it was truly what I wanted. Then I got prescribed Spiro and estradiol, 50 milligrams of Spiro, 2 milligrams of estradiol twice a day. Even better, it was sent to my pharmacy and that would be ready the next day. I was ecstatic and started my 4-hour drive back, now in the dark, early winter night. Somehow the drive felt quicker, and I was so giddy with excitement. So, with that, I took my first dose, and within an hour, my mind felt calmer. It had immediately done more than any antidepressant. It didn't numb me, it made everything more vivid. With each passing day, it got better and better. It was like my mind was dusting off the cobwebs and living again. Dreams I'd given up on and totally forgotten about came back to me. It took about a month to notice any physical change, but in my mind, so much had changed. From here, it just takes time. There isn't some key to being an estrogen pro, but I do hope this helps someone in some way. After about a month, I noticed my hair getting a little softer and even thicker. I always had really thick hair, but it was getting even more so. My skin got a little softer too. By the 2-month mark, my chest was developing. I was far from having boobs, but I didn't care. That pain of watching my body turn into something so unlike me was being undone. By month 2, I could tell that the fat on my hips was different. Nothing dramatic. My face was also a little slimmer too, with my cheeks getting rounder. Most dramatically of all, though, was my body hair being lessened dramatically. My biggest source of dysphoria was so much less. My chin line was becoming much less defined too. So I finally decided it was time to invest in laser hair removal. After an $8,000 loan, I started my first round of laser. Let me tell you that it hurts so much. It is such an agonizing and painful process, but it couldn't be more worth it. By the 3-month mark, I had little A-cup titties and needed to wear a bralette going out, which helped encourage me to dress more feminine in public. I will say though, everyone's mileage will vary. This is all genetics. I was incredibly lucky to be at a point already of occasionally passing. That probably came from me already having really long hair. At this point, I still used my dead name. I knew it was wrong for me, but my ex kept pressuring me not to change my name. In hindsight, I wish I had the conviction to stand up for myself. I convinced myself my name was androgynous enough. But every time I used it, it rang in my head like someone else's name and not mine, and my stomach sank. At the 3-month follow-up appointment, I had my dose up from the 2 milligrams estradiol and 50 milligrams Spiro twice a day to now 3 milligrams estradiol and 100 milligrams Spiro twice a day, and 100 milligrams of progesterone every night. The progesterone immediately helped with my insomnia, an issue I thought I would face forever. I started going to the gym again, nothing ridiculous like before, leg workouts and mostly running. At this point, I had realized so much strength had left my body. My arms used to be big and muscled, but now the muscle had just vanished. I went from benching 160 to just 45, for example. By the 4th month, changes started to accelerate. I noticed my shoes were a little big on me. My chest had started developing more shape to it as well. My hips and thighs and face were changing day by day. But things at home were getting bad. I was about 6 months in now, and looking more and more separate from my past self day by day. My sister got verbally abusive and physically violent about me. to the point she broke appliances in the apartment, forcing us to move as soon as the lease ended in another 3 months. I tried to come out to my parents, but all I got was confused support from my mom and my dad yelling at me and my fiance that I'll never be a daughter in his house. I had another hormone follow-up, and at this appointment, I requested to switch to injections. Injections apparently bypass your liver so you greater results. And greater results I did see. In the 3 months following, I've gone from A cups to heavy B cups to C cups. My body got increasingly feminine, and to the point of just routinely male failing, where I think I look like a dude, but I just don't. Then I finally got the Canon bangs, which I completely adore. Though a lot of fear also started building at that time because it seemed like my access to healthcare would be diminished because of this administration. So, getting to the 11th month mark, so much had changed. It's incredible how much. Getting up to a D cup, and then my hips getting increasingly defined. The bangs I got just helped affirm me so well. Just make my face feel more complete. And I just became so happy with how I look. I reconnected with Harmony and I couldn't be happier. Having a friend who loves and cherishes you like you love and cherish them is a wonderful thing. They're also the community that I desperately needed. I've also made another friend thanks to Twitch streamer Wonder Aria. Her chat has so many amazing people that help me come out of my shell and encourage me to reach out to Harmony. The trans community is such a beautiful and sweet group of people, and I'm so eternally lucky to be part of them. Also, I dumped my ex right before Christmas because they were incredibly abusive, toxic, and transphobic. Merry Christmas! Now that I'm a year and 4 months into HRT, it's pretty safe to say it's both life-saving and transformative. Harmony and I actually started dating a few months ago. Being around someone who actually understands and cares about you is so liberating. Like feeling a cool breeze on your face on a hot summer day. Being with someone else who shares those struggles and cares for you, about you being you, that is really special. Now transition is no longer a waiting game for eventual changes. HRT's done everything I wanted to and so much more than I expected. I cannot even imagine living a life like I did before. In a way, I feel as if I was always transitioning. It's nearly impossible to see my pre-transition self as me. It's nearly impossible to see my pre-transition self. It's now opened new social doors. It's helped me find my real chosen family that cares about me for being me. Find my confidence and my ability to stand my own, yet also just lean on the ones I love whenever I need to. I no longer worry about whether I'll get to a certain cup size. I mean, for heck's sake, I'm at double D's now. Or if maybe I'll lose just another inch of height. I've gone from 6'2" to 5'10". My transition goals now are just getting our SRS and helping anyone else who's questioning. Help them find their strength and the resources they need to truly flourish and grow. So now that I'm over 1 year on HRT, what now? What does it mean to transition? How much have I changed? Honestly, it's a total and complete chemical rebalance. It would be impossible to really imagine before going through it yourself. HRT does change your biology. Sure, it doesn't change everything for you though. We carry our birth with us wherever we go. But it changes every single other tiny detail. It isn't just, oh, you get boobs. It's every detail is processed in your brain in such a healthier way. Like seeing the world in a wider view of color. It gives you the agency in your life to pick up the pieces and truly build something beautiful. For me, it's giving me the clarity to work on external issues along with my internal ones. I can see a future. I can breathe deeper, love fuller. It's something so wonderfully abstract. If you feel like me, or if you feel like you could be, I couldn't encourage you enough to explore that feeling and find your true self. There's nothing bad that could ever happen with you exploring your own gender. Whether or not you're cisgender, transgender, non-binary, anything, introspection is healthy and needs to be encouraged. Because of that, it's up to all of us to be the change in the world we wish to see. talk to the people around us, encourage positivity. Not toxic positivity, just positivity. Life is short, so love hard, because the most important thing for you to do is live. Thank you so much for watching. It genuinely means the world to me. And if you made it this far, I would love if you left a like and even subscribed. I would love it if you kept coming around. This was a blast to make and quite a process. So I'm looking forward to my next project. If you'd like to see more of me, then follow me and my girlfriend on twitch.tv/Angels of Kyoto. Thank you. Bye.